She was the face of the 90s. Vogue called her the most beautiful woman in the world. Linda Evangelista didn't just model clothes, she defined what it meant to be a supermodel.
When I first cut my hair off and I went to Milano to do the shows, I was booked for like 20 shows. About 15 of them canceled me because they didn't understand the haircut at first.
And yet, just a season later, everyone wanted to look like her. That's the Linda effect. From Versace runways to the iconic Freedom music video, she was everywhere, until she wasn't. So what really happened to Linda Evangelista? Why did she disappear at the height of her fame? And how did one decision change her life and face forever? Before the silence and the surgeries, Linda was at the center of a fashion revolution. Alongside Naomi, Cindy, Christy, and Claudia, she wasn't just in the spotlight. She was the spotlight. But unlike many other top models, Linda wasn't discovered by chance. She didn't stumble into modeling. She chased it.
I really wanted to wear fashion. I wanted to model because I was obsessed with fashion. I was obsessed with clothing. I just loved it, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't discovered in a mall.
From the time she was a child, Linda was drawn to glamour, sneaking her aunt's makeup, collecting costume jewelry, and plastering her bedroom walls with pages ripped from Vogue. But her path wasn't easy. She started with 8-hour bridal catalog shoots in Canada, saving every cent to build a test portfolio. When she finally got to Europe, most jobs went to taller, more conventional girls. But Linda didn't give up.
It took me a few years to get going. I worked every day, but I didn't do genius things right from the beginning. So I went through a lot to get where I am, and I appreciate it. And it's what I hoped for.
She wasn't an overnight success. She was the opposite. She grounded out until the world noticed. And once Vogue finally booked her, it was over. Linda was in. But it was her collaboration with photographer Steven Meisel that would change everything. The two became creative soulmates, building images so iconic, they defined an entire era.
It's very easy to work once with a photographer because everybody's curious, but to get rebooked over and over and over, that takes, a lot of factors. They have to love you.
Together, they created a visual language of fashion, polished, intense, transformative. And as fashion moved from minimalism to glam, from catalogs to culture, Linda evolved right along with it. Then came the moment that changed everything.
We were just hitting fashion people, and suddenly I was being recognized by kids on the street, and that's what really did it.
That one video didn't just cement her status, it made her immortal. She was no longer just a model. She was a cultural icon. She had the face, the talent, the discipline. The world couldn't stop watching her. Until suddenly, she disappeared. For a while, Linda Evangelista seemed to vanish. No interviews, no campaigns, no runway returns like the other top models. In an industry built on visibility, she disappeared into silence. Naomi was still on runways. Cindy launched skincare lines. Claudia was closing Versace shows. But Linda? Nothing. Not a red carpet, not a campaign, not even a candid shot. The silence was loud. Fans speculated. Had she retired? Was she ill? But no one knew the truth. What people didn't know was that Linda wasn't resting. She was hiding. Not from fame, but from herself. In 2015, Linda underwent a cosmetic procedure called cool sculpting, a non-invasive treatment designed to freeze and reduce fat cells. It was marketed as quick, painless, and effective. But for Linda, it went horribly wrong. Instead of shrinking the fat, she developed a rare and devastating side effect known as paradoxical adipose hyperplasia, or PAH. Her fat cells didn't dissolve. They multiplied, hardened, and grew. She said it caused bulges that deformed her body, leaving her unrecognizable. And worst of all, the damage was irreversible.
Do you see the angle of my arms? Okay, I can't put them next to my body because this bulge is making them veer off in an angle. Versace won't want to dress me with that sticking out of my body.
For over 5 years, Linda lived in near total seclusion. She avoided mirrors, declined every job offer, hid from friends. She stopped attending events, even the ones that celebrated the supermodel era she helped define. And it wasn't about vanity. It wasn't about ego. It was about identity. The face that had built her career no longer felt like hers.
My son used to say, before I told him the truth, he used to make comments frequently like, "Mommy, do you remember when you used to be fun? How come you don't laugh anymore?" So I hate what this has done to my relationship with him.
It wasn't just her body image that was broken. It was her spirit. She didn't recognize herself, and neither did the people closest to her. She fell into a deep depression. At times, she said, she couldn't even face going outside. And while she was suffering, the industry she once defined said nothing. No designer came calling, no magazine offered to shoot her. It was as if fashion, the world she helped build, had no place for her anymore. Eventually, Linda filed a $50 million lawsuit against Cool Sculpting's parent company, claiming physical disfigurement, emotional trauma, and lost income. The company disputed her claims publicly, stating the procedure was safe, tested, and widely performed. But for Linda, it was too late. The damage, physically, emotionally, financially, had already been done. And what made her story even more devastating was how quiet it all was. This wasn't a scandal. There were no meltdowns, no addictions, no breakdowns caught on camera. Linda's story was different. Her fall was quiet, invisible, psychological, and that's what makes it even more haunting. She wasn't destroyed by the fame machine. She was destroyed by the pressure to stay perfect within it, by a culture that tells women to remain ageless, flawless, and invisible once they're not. She did what so many are pressured to do, and paid the ultimate price for it. Then in 2022, after nearly 5 years in the shadows, Linda Evangelista stepped in front of the camera again. This time, not for a luxury brand or a runway show, but for herself. She appeared on the cover of British Vogue, her first major editorial since the Cool Sculpting trauma. But this wasn't the glossy fashion moment we were used to. The shoot was different. Carefully lit, strategically posed. Her jawline was shaped with tape and elastics. Her neck partially concealed. Linda wasn't pretending the damage hadn't happened. She was managing how the world would see it. The image was striking, not because it was flawless, but because it carried the weight of survival. In her British Vogue interview, Linda admitted, "I miss my job so much, but I can't just go out and take jobs like I used to, not with what I look like now." Her honesty hit like a gut punch. For decades, she had been one of the most photographed women in the world. Now, she was confronting the truth so many women are forced to hide, that the price of beauty can be irreversible. The Vogue cover made headlines across the globe, not because Linda looked glamorous, but because she was finally telling the truth about what happened to her. It wasn't just a comeback. It was a reckoning with the impossible standards that the fashion world had forced onto her, and onto generations of women. Soon after, Linda was invited to star in the Fendi campaign, celebrating 25 years of the iconic baguette bag. There she was, standing beside Kate Moss, shot in classic black and white. No fanfare, no filters. Just presence. For the first time since her disappearance, Linda stepped back into the fashion world, not as an object, but as a woman who had survived something deeper than most people could imagine. She didn't pretend everything was okay. In her People interview, she said, "Am I cured mentally? Absolutely not. But I'm trying to love myself again." The campaign didn't signal a full return to modeling. She wasn't walking runways or fronting beauty lines like she used to. But it was something more meaningful, a message that said, "I'm still here. I never left, even when you stopped looking for me." Linda didn't come back to prove she was flawless. She came back to prove that flaws don't erase value. She's opened up about mental health, about loss, about aging, about how hard it is to look in the mirror and still recognize yourself, especially when your face was once your currency. This was the same woman who once helped define an entire generation of beauty. And now she was rewriting what beauty could mean. She didn't return with a makeover. She didn't reinvent herself. She simply showed up with pain, with courage, and with the same quiet strength that had built her legacy decades earlier. Linda Evangelista didn't just return. She redefined what a comeback looks like. Not with perfection, not with erasure, but with truth. The world saw Linda Evangelista return. They saw the scarf, the light, the pose. They called it brave. But they didn't see what came next. Because the truth is, even after the cameras flashed again, Linda was still in hiding. Not from the public anymore, but from the pain she never expected to relive. Just months after her return, Linda quietly faced something even more terrifying than disfigurement: a second breast cancer diagnosis. She didn't tell her friends. She didn't tell the industry. She barely told herself. In her People interview, she admitted, "I had a bilateral mastectomy. I thought I was clear, but the cancer came back. I kept it quiet. I didn't want to burden anyone." And once again, Linda vanished. But this time, not because she didn't feel beautiful, because she didn't know if she'd survive. Through all of it, one person remained by her side. Not a photographer, not a stylist, Christy Turlington. In an interview with Vogue UK, Linda said, "Christy was the only one who checked on me regularly. She never gave up on me." In a world where friendships often dissolve as fast as fashion trends, Christy's loyalty was constant, a quiet thread holding Linda together when everything else was falling apart. When she finally returned to the studio, it wasn't to chase approval. It was to reclaim control. In 2023, Linda and Meisel released a book together, a visual archive of her career, and a personal act of authorship. In her own words, "I wanted to be seen how I choose to be seen, not how they used to see me. That's the difference." In an industry that once used her image to define beauty, she reclaimed it on her own terms. No ad campaign, no runway, no apology. Just the woman who started it all still standing. When she disappeared the first time, the fashion world moved on. But the second time, they listened. Because by then, everyone knew. Linda Evangelista wasn't just a model. She was a mirror. A mirror for every woman who had ever been discarded when they aged. A mirror for everyone who ever tried to disappear because they didn't feel enough. A mirror for everyone who has survived something the world couldn't see. And maybe that's the legacy. Not the runway, not the magazine covers, not even the perfect images she once helped create, but the moment she chose to break the illusion. She simply stepped out of the frame, until she was ready to write the caption herself. And when she did, it wasn't for approval. It wasn't for beauty. It was for truth. And that is the most powerful image of all.